Alright, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me once again today, and welcome back to the battle for Wesnoth. Today, we begin looking at replays from the first round of the, what are we calling it now, the 2019 Wesnoth Amateurs Cup. That seems appropriate, we're all very amateur here. And so the first ones that we're going to show are actually the first game that was played, the first match that was played, which was between myself and Phaonix. There's a list of participants down below in the description for reference. The total list of participants in the tournament. We have myself, obviously playing, Phaonix, Isalphalon, Dakede, Prey, Calandiel, MrProgressor, Jakalor, stev, TheEnclave, Huskyeer, Butterlad, Perun, Brongue, Greyr, Imir, INTPTree, AlexanderML, Lemon, and Sergey. Some of those names you'll probably recognize from previous games of Dominions 5 and such on the channel. Some you probably won't, but that's okay. We had a bunch of new players, a bunch of new faces join the channel for the tournament, and I'm really glad to see them. So, this is the first game in my match between myself and Phaonix, the first match of the tournament. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to get the second game of this match recorded. I'll talk about that in between the first and the third. We're going to watch both replays. And so we're just going to set this on continuous replay, and I'll pause it when I feel the need. I need to pause real quick. So for point of view, we're going to go to each team. So my initial recruit here. This is Caves of the Basilisk. There was a set of 5 maps that we could choose from in order to play each game on. We're playing best 2 out of 3. So I let, I'm losing my mind. I let Phaonix pick the map for the first and third games, since he has less experience than I do playing Wesnoth. So he chose Caves of the Basilisk. Caves of the Basilisk is interesting because it has a bunch of water in the middle. So as the Loyalists, we're playing with random factions, as I mentioned before in the rules. So, completely random, I got Loyalists with a White Mage leader. So I did recruit a Merman Fighter. Mermen are quite good in water, 60% defense, 50% in deep water, and also in swamps. And there are a number of swamp villages. There's a swamp village there, and a swamp village there, plus 1 there, and 1 there. So in all those places, this guy has 60% defense, and he's not bad. I did get a quick intelligent one, so he's not very tough, but he takes very little experience to level up. So we're going to go back to the replay. And we can see here, my opponent is the Drake, so he's recruiting several Saurian skirmishers and a few Drakish units. On the first turn, we're spreading out to take our villages. So far, everything seems pretty normal, except that my village capturing was fairly suboptimal in that I left these 2 alone. So it'll take me a couple turns to finish getting them. So as you can see, he started with a Drake Flare, so leadership plus decent fire breath attack. He's got his 3 Saurian skirmishers, which will be useful during the nighttime, a Drake Fighter, a Clasher, and a Glider, so a fast, scouty type unit. I like Clashers. In most matchups, I think Clashers are going to do good work for you. Drake Fighters are, paradoxically, I think, less useful in some matchups because their ranged attack is fairly weak. But they're like Elvish Fighters. They have a ranged attack that's kind of secondary. That just means you can't ever attack them without taking any retaliation. So, that Drake Glider, on account of being very fast, has seen my cavalrymen, so he now knows that I am the Loyalists. I, however, have not seen any Drakes yet, and I'm actually doubling back to grab my village, and there I discover the identity of my opponents. So we're both kind of still scouting out, feeling out where the enemy is at this point. He's actually going in for an attack. A little bit unsupported, I would say, but, you know, worth trying probably. This right here, I have to point this out. This was a fairly unwise attack, because Merman Fighters have, as I said, 60% defense, compared to the 40% this Drake Clasher has. And the Drake Clasher is not vulnerable to Pierce, but also not resistant to Pierce. He's 0% on Pierce damage, whereas he is quite resistant to Impact and Blade and Fire. So, the Merman Fighter actually hits almost as hard as he does and has a lot better defense. So this overall, I would say, was probably an unwise attack. And he missed all of his attacks, so it really didn't pay off for him. Up on my side, it's coming up night. I don't really want to be advancing during the nighttime, but I'm perfectly happy continuing this trade. And it's worth noting, after this little fight here, I was shooting arrows at him. If we look at stats, at this point, I've gotten fairly lucky. I've taken less damage than I should have. I should have taken at least 1 hit from this guy earlier on. So I've taken quite a bit less damage than I should have, and I've inflicted quite a bit more damage at this point. So far, if we look at, yeah, that's the end game results. Okay, so continuing to advance, however, even though it's nighttime, I don't want to give the enemy more time than they need to. And let me see if I can look at his stats since he's attacking now. He's almost got his yes, I can. So we can see here he's inflicting a little bit less damage and taking more damage than he really should, but this turn it's starting to even out in that he's inflicting more damage than he should. He's got a nice little attack here on my bowman, and this is the right time of day to be attacking with Saurian skirmishers. So he's managed to kill my bowman, he's got Hash here, almost leveled up. And he's going in for, I would say this is another unwise attack. This is a little bit too aggressive to be going in with these, you know, Drake units. However, it is nighttime, I'm starting to fall back. But my bowman here is not at much risk and can cheerfully just take some damage. Or inflict some damage, rather. And I'm recruiting a horseman. Drakes fear horsemen a lot, because with that charge attack that does piercing damage, they're vulnerable to piercing damage, so horseman charge attacks can do monstrous damage, and Drakes don't have good defensive terrain anywhere. They're all 30 or 40%. Nothing better than 40% anywhere. So the horseman is very likely to hit. We're seeing more and more Saurians arriving. Fewer Drakes, comparatively speaking. Up here, this is actually a really good situation because we have the same defense, but I have more hit points and I'm on a village. Over here, we're shifting more and more units out in that direction. Once again, we've got the Saurian skirmishers coming in. Merfolk in the water are just tough enough that I'm not too worried about this. And as morning comes, my mage is going to go in against this Saurian in an effort to blast him off, and it does not work. He takes no damage whatsoever while inflicting retaliation. Very disappointing. This Saurian was on bad terrain in the water here, so we just went right in and killed him off. Barnick has gotten some pretty decent experience. And we moved my commander over here to guard this village so this Saurian skirmisher couldn't run over and take it. Or on this side, it looks like the enemy is kind of gearing up for an attack. They're moving a lot of units over in this direction. However, the units are mixed, you know, Drakes and Saurians, so I'm fairly confident that they're not going to rush in immediately. Up there, scored the kill. We're moving back to get in recruitment position again. Over here, I'm moving these units around because I wanted my bowmen on the village. Bowmen get 60% defense on villages, cavalry don't. So the cavalry, who is incidentally fairly resistant to all of the melee damage except for the clasher. So like the Saurian, the Drake fighter that I see here, and the Drake gliders, melee attacks do quite a bit less damage to cavalrymen than they normally would. It's okay if he's sitting out here on the flat. They can gang up on him if they want. His combat potential is a little bit more limited than the bowman against Drakes specifically. I have another bowman up on the mountain. I've got my horseman over here kind of guarding the flank. If the Drake glider wants to come in and try to fight the horseman, that's fine by me. And over here, I still actually have a decent number of units, total of 3 units against the enemy's 1 or 2 down this way. I can also see the enemy's commander, Phaonix the Drake Flare. So at this point, I still feel like things are pretty okay. They've set up quite a strong point over there. It's going to be very hard to attack, and they're moving more units over to skirmish with me on the right. And I'm not really interested in pressing right now. I want to heal up, get a couple more units towards the front. And of course, I need to build up forces over here to deflect this attack. Now, we've got my merman fighter and a second merman fighter that I've recruited pressing in the center simultaneously. It is coming on night, but I see the opportunity and my merfolk are going to go in against this Drake fighter. They have decent luck. They do quite a bit of damage to that fighter. If we look at stats, we can see they are starting to normalize. At this point, I've actually overall both inflicted and taken less damage than expected, but my luck is slightly negative overall. Meanwhile, my units are shifting around. I don't want to commit to an attack, and I'm trying to move my horsemen back to a spot where they can't be ambushed by Saurian skirmishers. Now the enemy commander is coming out, and he dramatically whiffs his entire fire breath attack, which is very sad. We're going to go in and do a little bit of stabbing on this clasher. And here comes the Drake attack, timed, interestingly, for dusk. So he's trying to use the Saurian skirmishers to eliminate my horsepower. Horsepower. And he's also focusing a lot of attention on my bowman on the mountain. And doing a pretty good job of it. He took the bowman out, did have to use up 4 of his unit's attacks to do that, but he succeeded nonetheless. So, come nighttime, here's the situation we find ourselves in. There's quite a strong Drake attack and Saurian attack developing over on this side, which I don't think these units can entirely hold off. The horsemen can potentially do a lot of damage, but the only units they can really attack right now are this Saurian skirmisher, who's been renamed to Swoley, which is, of course, is quickly becoming a meme. High experience, of course. Saurian skirmishers are very easy to level up in terms of they only need 2 kills plus a couple of fights to make it. Horsemen have a really bad chance of killing this guy, and they would take a ton of retaliatory damage, because against horsemen he does like 14 damage a hit right now, if he's counterattacking a charge. So I really don't want to charge him. I can charge Dakede, the Drake glider here, but I'm unlikely to kill him, and unfortunately these 2 guys are still blocking off the Drake Fighter and the Drake Clasher. The Drake Fighter is who I would really like to charge. I don't really want to move off my village, because if I do, the Drake Skirmishers, the Saurian Skirmishers, will steal my villages. So I feel like I'm going to have to fall back once again. Over on this side, I feel fine about this. Yeah, the Mage is not super effective against Drake Fighters, but actually, at nighttime, the Mage does still do more damage to Drakes than he takes in retaliation, and Spearmen are very good against Drakes at all times of day. So the Spearman moves in, doing a little bit more poke damage. The Mage is getting his slaps. And we're coming in for the kill stroke. And we barely managed to get it. Down here, meanwhile, I'm moving in to take enemy villages. Now this is the turn. Excuse me. This is actually the turn where the game changes, because here I move my white mage out to participate in the battle. This is always a little bit of a risk. It's more of a risk when you have a mage commander like this, because he's squishy, only 35 hit points, no real resistances, bad defenses. He's lawful, he doesn't do a ton of damage. He does do arcane damage, which can... it's mildly resisted, but it can do solid damage versus pretty much every unit. And Drakes are actually very vulnerable to arcane damage. They have minus 30%. So, if I can get the white mage into combat with the Drakes, I can do a ton of damage. I just have to make sure that I protect him. Over here, launching a little bit of a cavalry attack, don't really accomplish much, and we're moving units back to block enemy attacking positions. Down here, we're still launching attacks on Greekon, but we did have to retreat one of my merfolk, essentially because I foresaw that coming, the Drake Burner coming over here. I wanted to have him in position to attack without getting ambushed, potentially, by this Saurian Skirmisher coming around behind me and flanking. Right now, we're still even on villages, and I'd really like to earn a 1 or 2 village advantage fairly soon. I had a 1 village advantage until Marito stole my village there. But, of course, village advantages take time to pay off. So, the Drake attack on this side is developing. They're definitely doing damage, but they're not, I would say, making a ton of progress just yet. However, they do have Swoley. And Swoley is now coming in an effort to level, and he does. So they now have a fully healed Saurian Ambusher in position. Swoley! That was a, INTPTree was observing this game. Down here, we're still doing more damage than we take, but Swoley is a very serious threat. Basically, right now, Swoley's on 60% defense terrain, has a ton of damage. I don't want to fight Swoley. Unfortunately, Swoley is also a skirmisher, so he can go anywhere he can reach. He can ignore zones of control. Right now, this fight over here is looking quite bad. However, it is second watch. It'll be dawn soon. As long as I can eliminate most of the Drakes, I can deal with the Saurians during day. I still have healthy income. I've got some money. I can afford to recruit things. I think it'll be fine at this point. However, this was the key mistake of the match. After recruiting, I moved GeneralConfusion back out, and GeneralConfusion is alone. Normally this would be okay because units are blocked by the various units guarding her. However, Swoley and Klez here are skirmishers. They ignore zone of control. And remember, General Confusion only has 35 HP, and right now Swoley does 9 times 4 damage, which is a grand total of 36. So, the Saurian turn comes. They're launching their attacks. They do manage to kill off a couple of units, which is unfortunate, but nothing I can't survive, and then Swoley launches his attack. And he hits with 3 out of the 4 strikes. I'm sorry, 9 times 4 is... Yeah, 9 times 4 is 36. He's doing... How did he end up doing exactly that amount of damage? Ah, yes, I do actually have 9 times 4. Yeah, he hit me 3 times. And I think I was missing a hit point from something earlier. No, he just hit me 3 times. So I still have 8 hit points left. But only 8 hit points left on my commander. It's a problem. And I think you can see where this is going to go. Down here, we've got some more fighting down in this area, and that completes the trap. Klez the Saurian skirmisher moves in, and now General Confusion is incapable of retreat. So, here we pause again. Immediately after that exchange of blows. The problem is, if we were to kill Klez, General Confusion could flee to this village, but I don't have the units to blockade that village, because Swoley is a skirmisher. Swoley can get onto any of these 5 spaces, and I do not have the units to put them on all 5 spaces, which means that I have to stand and fight. General Confusion cannot get away. I can blockade out these units and this guy, but I can't blockade out either of these units, and if they score 2 hits, I die. Fortunately, it is dawn, so it has to be 2 hits. But if either of these guys live long enough to score 2 hits on me, and or if I allow any of the drakes to get around or through my blockade, I will lose. So we'll see how this goes. I calculated out the odds, and I come up with an attack plan. I have to eliminate at least both of these units, plus ideally Decon, in order to have a good chance of living. Alright, so Swoley is now dead. However, we have an opening created for Decon by the movement of Dererin. So, General Confusion is no longer able to move. We only have my 2 horsemen left. If I can kill Klez and Decon, so that neither of them can attack, I'll be fine. Otherwise, if I can kill Klez, then Decon would have to succeed at both of his attacks, a total of 36% chance to actually kill General Confusion. So we kill him, we go in for the charge on Decon. Complete whiff. Over here, we're stabbing this guy just because we can, because he's there to be stabbed. Doing a little bit of fighting, but this is all a sideshow. What matters here is what happens up here. Because, of course, if Decon kills General Confusion, then Phaonix wins instantly. If he fails to kill General Confusion, then Phaonix is in a bit of a pickle, because over here, his units are scattered and damaged, and he's lost a number of them. Down here, his units are not really being super successful yet, albeit they can make pressure. Over on this side, his units have effectively been defeated, albeit they are taking a couple of my spearmen with them. So, if I don't die instantly, I have a pretty significant advantage. Let's see how that goes for me. And I die instantly. And Phaonix wins the game. Well done. Well played. I made a big mistake moving my commander out like that. I really should have just stayed back here recruiting and not moved out unless it was absolutely vital. It would have ultimately helped me a lot more. If we look at stats, we can see that Phaonix was very slightly lucky that game overall. He inflicted slightly less damage than expected, but he also took less damage than expected. Total, he recruited 15 units, lost 6, killed 6, almost even honors there, and advanced 1. So that was game 1. Game 2, as I said, we didn't manage to record. It was me playing as Northerners versus Phaonix playing as Loyalists, and it was a slow, more tactical match in which I very slowly edged out an advantage, and finally Phaonix just conceded defeat. So that one we didn't manage to get a replay of, but we did get a replay of our third game. So let's skip to that. So in game 3, we are playing on, I forget the name of this map actually. It's another one of the basic 1v1 pretty much symmetrical maps. I'm playing as the Rebels, and in this game we actually told each other what we were playing after we loaded in, basically because Phaonix had made a joke in voice chat about how he was going to get Undead and immediately lose, and then he started laughing hysterically as soon as we'd logged in, so I knew he had Undead, and so in the spirit of fairness I told him that I had Rebels. So, Rebels versus Undead. An interesting matchup. Rebels rely a lot on piercing damage, which Skeletons resist very, very heavily. But Rebels also have some pretty potent anti-undead tools. Specifically, they have Wozes and they have Mages. Wozes do tons and tons of crushing damage and are lawful and can regenerate like trolls. And Mages do tons of fire damage, which the Undead also don't like, and which can kill ghosts pretty good. I need to change the point of view to each team incidentally, which I didn't do on that first turn. So, as you can see down here, the Undead, Phaonix has started off with a Dark Sorceress. He's recruited 2 Ghosts, and some Skeletons, and a Dark Adept. The Dark Adept, of course, is most of the Undead's killing power, especially at night, but is also very vulnerable to being countered due to extremely low HP and no melee attack whatsoever. Skeletons are solid, basic units. They are tragically vulnerable to fire, arcane, and somewhat to crushing damage, while being highly, highly resistant to blade and pierce. And ghosts are highly resistant to physical attacks, but vulnerable to fire and magic, or they resist fire slightly, but not much. And they have abysmal HP totals, so those resistances are really the only thing keeping them alive. On top of that, they are kind of like Drakes. They just have 50% defense everywhere, as opposed to the 30 or 40% that Drakes have. So somewhat tankier than Drakes, but not by much. So the basic starts units are going out to capture villages, get some more income. I'm moving my woes down. I'm trying to get my woes onto this little patch of woods. And I'm moving my commander down as well, just in case somebody tries something cheeky. As you can see here, he can now see my woes, I think. Because his ghosts can see my woes at this point. But the woes does get into the trees. And we recruit another mage. I'm going very, very mage heavy here. A little bit of skirmishing going on there. The ghost actually took the worst of it. And this ghost then moves up and is immediately ambushed by my woes. Here we've managed to slow that ghost right down, so we can do some more damage to it. Excellent. It can't run away from me now. Moving a mage in separately, and my my scout is going on a commando mission deep in enemy territory, while a mage and a woes team up to punch a ghost directly to death. As you can see, we don't do much damage with our arrows against those skeletons. In fact, not doing much damage with arrows against skeletons is a consistent theme. Using ranged weapons on skeleton archers may seem strange, but it worked out for us, and it let me feed another kill to my woes, the woes knows, who I will shortly rename. Over here, we've got a mage engaging in a one-on-one duel with a skeleton. Normally that's extremely dangerous, but you know, sometimes it works out when there's no backup around, and we're on highly defensive terrain. I thought the risk was worth the candle. And of course I do have my elvish captain coming over to help if necessary. Down here, this scout is just being a huge fucking nuisance. As you can see, we've cut his income significantly by taking a couple of his villages. He can now reclaim that one and attack my scout again, but still, I just feel like the nuisance is probably worth it. The distraction, etc. This ghost needs to die, but so far we haven't accomplished that yet. But we do have a woes who's only 11 experience points away from leveling. So we've got units moving in to try and wipe out the scout. And that scout is not long for this world, we can already tell, but that's fine. Meanwhile, this skeleton, I think that was a misclick. There was no reason to move out of the castle there. But it's now coming on dawn, which means that our damage is staying the same while his damage is going down. And we're lining up on the banks of the river. And our mage is going to score his first skeleton kill. Won't Mama be proud? Over here, our scout is going to sell his life dearly, which he does. And the enemy is going to advance to the banks of the river. However, tactically speaking, at this point, I've got Ghost Puncher and the Woe's Nose here. And I've got a very, very strong tactical position because I can just hold the banks of this river. There's not really any way he can push across it effectively. It's 20% defense in the middle. These are normally impassable. Skeletons could stand there, but they would have 10% defense. You can have 40% defense over here, so really, tactically speaking, what the Undead should do is just refuse to engage this and shift, probably in this direction, but potentially also in this direction. If they try to shift this direction, however, I can easily blockade them with my Woses up on the hills. Yeah, they'll only have 30% defense, versus 40%, but they hit so hard, they can still kill skeletons in that context. They hit really hard, and they resist the damage types that skeletons do by a lot. 60% and 40%. For impact and for blade, it's... what's their blade resistance? They don't resist blade, but a skeleton trying to engage a Woes with an axe is a skeleton that's not long for this world. And of course, I can hide a Woes right here, and anybody who moves here gets ambushed and has to automatically stop. So I have a pretty solid defensive setup on this side. On this side, I would find it harder to engage them. I would have to actually move out of my defensive terrain and fight them on the river. I think this is probably the best way for the Undead to go at this point. And actually, at this point, I'm launching something of a bonsai charge in the day, mainly to keep him focused on me, and also in an effort to level up Ghost Puncher really quickly. As you can see, during the daytime, we're not taking all that much damage from the Dark Adepts. Yes, it's some damage, but it's not crucial, crippling damage, especially since Ghost Puncher is so close to level. At this point, he only needs 9 experience. We have lost a unit over there. That was very careless, but I think it'll be okay. Got a mage over there doing some damage. My other Woes coming in to add his punches to the fray. We're going to kill off an enemy ghost, move in, kill off an enemy skeleton, punch a Dark Adept. Didn't manage to punch the Dark Adept, but that's okay. We've got another Woes and another mage coming. My mage over here is under attack by a bat. I would say the enemy commander probably should have gone in to finish him off, but, not entirely my call. However, it's coming on evening, which means that it's not a time I want to remain locked in deadly combat with the Undead. So, we are going to retreat our units temporarily. And the commander is moving forward again. Ghost Puncher is on low defense terrain, but that matters less to Woses than it does to pretty much any other unit because they're always on low defense terrain. And all he needs to do now is get 1 kill and he'll level. And when he levels, he becomes much scarier. So Ghost Puncher is cured. Up here, we're blasting a bat off of one of our villages. This, incidentally, was a very stupid move. I shouldn't have done this. By doing this, I brought Govan within range of Phaonix, the Dark Sorceress, and Dark Sorceresses shit all over mages at night. As you can see, 16 times 2 versus 5 times 3. Not a good comparison. Now, over here, we do actually have some enemy units moving around to invade the flank, or rather, one enemy unit. Elf Lumberjack here is moving up. By the way, these silly names, these are names that we have given our units. You can rename all your units. This is the Sound of Punching. This is the Woe's Nose, and where is Ghost Puncher? There's Ghost Puncher. And of course, we have Elf Lumberjack coming up as well. So we're pulling back, reshuffling a little bit. Don't really want to engage the Undead at night. I should have remembered that when I sent this guy out, because he did 5 damage and then instantly died. Not a very good, not a good death, shall we say. That ghoul got a little bit greedy, and we punched him to death, so now we have an Elder Woes. Bunch more damage, bunch more hit points. 12 more HP, and 4 more damage, which is pretty freaking sweet. Got units over here to stop Elf Lumberjack, and we're lined up along the river like a wall. They can definitely kill this mage, as you just saw there, but just killing that mage does not penetrate my defenses. I have plenty more to go. We've got Elf Lumberjack dead, and we're now advancing on the flank. Over here, we've got skeletons in the water. that we're just going to punch the hell out of. And this duel is being intercepted by a mage, and another Woes is moving up. Yep, he was ambushed and decided to attack the Woes, which was a poor decision. So, 2 ghouls down for the cost of 1 mage. I call that a victory, and we're now advancing a pretty significant flanking force. Plus, we've just gotten rid of his one of his only 2 adepts. Got a little bit lucky on that round, but not super lucky, to be honest. We've inflicted a little bit more damage than we expected. We've taken 1 less hit than we expected, which is good, but this, honestly, a lot of that was balanced out by this mage completely fucking failing to accomplish anything. Though, of course, the impact of lucky streaks can't be underestimated. When you successfully punch the Dark Adept 2 out of 2 times, that's good. That's real, real good. So at this point, the attack is crashing home, and there's not a whole lot the Undead can do about it. They're simply overpowered. They've lost too many units. They don't have the cash to keep this fight up, and of course we are continuing to punch all of their units to death, because this is definitely one of those matchups in which Woses shine. At this point, all Phaonix can really do is spam some Undead, spam some walking corpses rather, and that's just feeding the experience. At this point, I believe Phaonix has already given up, but just wants to play it out for completion's sake. And so, very shortly, it will be time for the great ceremony of Elfkind, the ceremonial punching of the sorcerer. Ah, majestic. So, if we look at stats, we can see here that overall, I was slightly lucky. I inflicted slightly more damage than expected. I took slightly less damage than expected. So that definitely did play a part. There were some key moments where I was lucky enough to score all the hits I was looking for, and it compensated for me playing somewhat aggressively. That said, I think tactically speaking, I had that one under control. Undead versus Rebels strikes me as a difficult matchup, because Woses and Mages between the 2 of them pretty much counter the entire Undead lineup. And then other units, you know, archers, elven fighters, etc., pretty much exist as chaff. Elven shamans with the entangle attack are pretty sweet themselves in this matchup, especially because it's blunt damage, so you can also use it on skeletons and actually hurt them. There aren't a whole lot of other matchups in which I tend to recruit multiple Woses. I'm trying to think of one. The only matchup I can think of where multiple Woses might potentially pay off would be against Loyalists or Knolgans. It could potentially pay off against Knolgans because Knolgans don't have any damage types that Woses are weak to, and most of their damage Woses are quite resistant to. Like, for example, a Thunderer shooting a Wose does something like 6 damage instead of the, 15 to 18 it normally does. So in that matchup, I could see a Wose or 2 maybe, but generally speaking, Undead is the matchup where I go for them, because they're just so good against Dark Adepts, against Skeletons, against pretty much everything that isn't a ghoul. A Wose can and will punch to re-death. But in any case, so, I won the middle game, as I said. So I won this game 2-1, with Swoley's Death Ride being the, in the very starting game, the very first game of the tournament. I got my leader completely sniped by a Saurian flanker. It was definitely a good start to things, but I did manage to come back, get the 2-1 victory, so I'll be advancing to the second round. I'll actually link the bracket down below in the description so you can see how far the tournament has progressed in real time, what matches have already been played, what the scores are, etc., and you can kind of anticipate who's going to show up, where doing what if you want. Now, if you don't want spoilers, don't click that link, because it will contain the current bracket, which includes all the wins so far. So if you don't want to know who's won matches that I will be casting and talking about, don't look at the bracket until the tournament is over. But in any case, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.